to have that passion for what you're doing. And solving the problems is part of the joy. And if you can combine all those things, I think that's what allows you to keep going and growing.
That was Mackenzie Colt. You may remember her as one of the Hee Haw Honeys on one of the longest-running comedy and music series. What you might not know is that this teenage mom found her way to Music City, landed on the Hee Haw series, and later launched what is now the oldest chocolate business in Nashville. Colt's high-end chocolates and pies are legendary. Mackenzie shares how she, as a young female entrepreneur and business owner, leveraged just about everything she had to create Colt's candies. We're better for knowing her, although our waistlines may not be. Join us as Mackenzie shares, as only she can do, her passion for performing, for baking, and for creating a new future for herself against all odds.
I'm Sally Hussey, the CEO of 50 Forward, and we elected to launch this podcast because we know older adults have such inspiring stories and wisdom worth sharing. We have now all learned that social connections are critical to our well-being. This podcast is made possible by 50 Forward, the leading resource for adults 50 plus in Middle Tennessee who seek to live longer, more fulfilling lives.
You're listening to Squeeze the Day, where we talk to extraordinary people over the age of 50 who are living their best life now. Their stories of a well-lived life are both inspiring and encouraging to all of us as we seek to navigate a meaningful and purpose-driven second chapter in our life. Today's Squeeze the Day is brought to you by the All of Us Research Program from the National Institutes of Health. Learn how you can help change the future of health by participating in the program. Visit www.joinallofus.org to learn more. I'm Susan Sizemore, Communications Director for 50 Forward, so let's get started. Mackenzie, tell us about your roots.
Well, I was born in Memphis, Tennessee, and we moved to St. Louis when I was very young. My father was a Major League Baseball player for the St. Louis Browns. He was a pitcher, actually, a southpaw, left-handed pitcher. So I was raised in St. Louis, and I probably went to about 7 different grade schools by the time I was in the 6th grade. So I felt like I was always the new kid, But, I didn't mind that. I kind of liked that. So we moved around a lot, but my father died when I was 7. And he was a young man. He was only 39. So I was raised with 2 older sisters by my mother, and I was the baby. But I always loved music, and I always loved trying to play the piano and the guitar. When I was in, I guess, the 7th grade, my girlfriends and I, we picked up a guitar and started learning and teaching and each other little chords or something, and it sort of started from that. But, I talk to my sisters now, and their memories are so different from mine. Mine are all about the food. My memories are all about, don't you remember when we ate this? Don't you remember when we made that? And they didn't remember. But I grew up in St. Louis, was married very young at the age of 15, had a son right after that, and only went to the 10th grade. But I have to tell you, I think what helped me more than anything was my love of reading. Reading, everything.
How interesting. I'm curious, from those early roots, what brought you to Nashville?
Well, the music, of course. I'm a singer and a songwriter, and I was on the Hee Haw show for many years, one of the girls that popped up out of the cornfield and told jokes. And as the only girl on the show that was a songwriter, as well as a singer, and I was the only musician, one of the only girl that was a musician as well. So they would ask me to sing something I'd written for the show, and which was really an opportunity to sing one of my original songs on the show. So it was kind of cool. Every year, the producer, Sam Lavella, would bring me into his office and say, okay, sit down, play for me what you've written lately. And then he would select a song from those, and I would sing it on the show. And it was, it was really, really inspiring for me to continue the songwriting. Hee Haw was taped here in Nashville, so I came to love this town. And I thought, why don't I move there and pursue the songwriting and the country music industry? So that's what brought me here, doing the Hee Haw show.
You have shared so much in such a short time that I bet people don't really know about you. It's really fascinating. And the bottom line is I really hadn't thought about how few of the Hee Haw Honeys, of which you were a Hee Haw Honey, actually sang or were performers. So they were really more actresses or actors.
Yes, if you could call it that. I mean, first of all, you never had to memorize anything because we had cue cards. And that was part of the fun of the show because there were certain people on the show like Junior Samples who really didn't even know how to read when they hired Junior. And they would give him big words or mess him up with the cue cards. And, the blooper part of Hee Haw was fun too. They had a lot of that going on. But when I think back, married at 15, put a husband through college and law school with my music. My education stopped because back in those days, that's what happened. The wife took care of everything else, the home, the children, and I worked with my music. But the cool thing was that I found a job 2 hours a night playing happy hour. And I earned more money then than working all day long. So I could be home with my son all day and then put him to bed at night. So that was, that part was really, I'm so thankful for. But when I was discovered by Buck Owens, who was one of the stars of Hee Haw, he asked me to go on the road with him and the Buckaroos and open all of his concerts. And I would do the first 30 minutes in front of 10,000 people, just me and my guitar. And it was just the beginning of my music career.
That is just so fascinating and fabulous on many, many levels. And I'm thinking about being a part of Hee Haw, which was comedy and music combined. You must have seen a number of superstars make their debut on the series, and I'd love to have you just share a little bit of that.
I did, and you don't know it at the time because they're just unknowns for the most part. But there was, of course, Kenny Rogers, who actually fell in love and married one of the Honeys, Marianne Rogers. And Garth Brooks was another one when he appeared on Hee Haw. Those are the only two I really remember. But, Hee Haw was such a venue for country music. And everyone wanted to be on it. And I'm so glad I had that opportunity to really get to know and be around all those icons in the music business, especially people like Minnie Pearl and Roy Acuff and Grandpa Jones and, the people that were so, again, iconic, and know them as a friend.
I can't imagine anybody having a better experience than someone like you, especially being so young and coming in with such roots that weren't connected to music and getting those opportunities. That's just a life-changing experience for sure.
Right. Your opportunities are what you make of them. You have your dreams. I always say dream your work, but work your dream. And that's what I did.
So that's a great transition because I'm curious to know what made you leave Hee Haw, because you've got another second chapter that many people know about as well. And if they don't, they should.
Thank you. It's just always in my life, I love music and food. And the food part was more the cooking and creating. And I had always loved the story of Wally Amos, famous Amos chocolate chip cookies. He was in the music business as a promoter, an agent, a manager. He worked for the William Morris Agency, and he would leave his cookies as a calling card. And I always loved that story. And I thought, I could do that. Somewhere in the back of my mind, I thought I could do that someday. And when I moved here, well, first of all, I used to make these two products and give them out to everybody. Probably the most famous person that I gave them to that kept calling me for them and asking for more and more and more was Dolly Parton. Dolly Parton loved my Colts Bolts, my chocolate peanut butter whole roasted almonds. So I would always hear that, oh my gosh, you should sell this, you should sell this. When we would come to Nashville to do Hee Haw, they would find me a kitchen in someone's home so I could make this and give it out the next day on the set. So I had so much encouragement from everyone. And I thought, I'm going to start my own company and do this. And that's what I did. In 1984, I moved here to pursue the songwriting and the music, but it was a different town then. It was like an old boys club. And female songwriters, especially having been on Hee Haw, because they didn't take me as seriously as an artist. That image that the girls have on the show, the wiggling around in the little dress, talking in a high voice. So I thought, what else do I do? I make these two products. I am going to stop everything and do that. And I did that. It wasn't easy. It was really, really hard. But I'm so glad I did.
I'm curious, do you miss performing or miss acting at all? Or do you still somehow work that into your new chocolate candy business?
I have always worked that into my food business. I always say I feel like all those years on stage were simply to prepare me to sell this chocolate. It worked out well for me. I had no fears. I just would go in and say, this is what I make. Please taste it. I think it would work well in your store. And then promote the heck out of it. I've always said that I don't have just one customer. I also have my customer's customer. I'm not just selling to that buyer. I'm selling to that buyer's customer if I want to continue and to grow. So with that in mind, I would do everything I could to get to the end customer and give them samples. And I think that worked out well after 35, 36 years.
So let's talk a little bit about the candy business today. And specifically, you talked a little bit about academics and a degree, and I'm betting you jumped into a candy business without having a lot of business acumen and training. So let's talk a little bit about that and how you got more of a sure and strong foundation.
Well, again, reading. Reading for me has been just a lifeline. Learning. Asking questions is really important too. And in 1984, Nashville was such a great town. When I decided to do this, I found a space that had actually been Minnie Pearl's test kitchen when she had her chicken business. I mean, I thought it was such a good omen. And so I leased that space and grew from there. Unfortunately, her chicken business did not survive, but my chocolate business has. And it was tough. I asked questions. I think if you have your basic, seat of the pants kind of smarts, a lot of just common sense. How does that work? What am I going to price this at? What would I pay for this product? I didn't know about markups and distributor pricing and broker's fees. And to tell you the truth, I didn't even know about payroll taxes. I probably shouldn't say that. But I did. I came from nothing. I came from not knowing anything or from knowing, can you know nothing? I mean, if you can know nothing, I did. I knew nothing. But again, you have people that are willing to help you and you just ask questions. And before you know it, a year's gone by, 2 years, 10 years, and it's the best thing you've ever done. I've employed so many people. I cannot tell you the pride that I have to help put their children through school, to help put a roof over their heads, and to have that kind of loyalty from employees. That's also a big part of my joy that I get.
That's a wonderful story, and it's neat to think about. As long as you've been in Nashville, you've had a number of different locations, but your candies are available all over.
Right. They're sold all over the country, from coast to coast. We've done some exporting to other countries. It's a little difficult to keep your eye on that ball because generally you sell through distributors in that instance. But I do love that. And the really cool thing is that the world is our customer. It's chocolate and it's consumed. It's not like your sweater that you have for 10 years, 20 years. You buy my chocolate and you eat it and you have to buy more. So it's an ongoing process. And again, it's chocolate. Who doesn't love chocolate?
So I was going to ask, can you give us the skinny, whether there is a skinny or not when it comes to the chocolate business, but can you give us the skinny on one of your best sellers?
Well, my signature item is definitely my Colt's Bolt, which is the chocolate peanut butter whole roasted almond piece. That was my first chocolate that I brought out. That was the chocolate that Dolly always asked for. And she used to eat a whole one. And then as she lost weight and became, the Dolly of today, she makes one last all day, is how she eats it now. She told me once. And then the Colt's, the gooey butter bar, salted caramel gooey butter. That was my first baked item. And those two are signature items that are just stronger than ever after all of these years. There's an interesting thing in the food business. Just a little bit better makes a huge difference. huge. So I knew that as long as we made this the same way every day and were consistent with that same quality, that we would have customers forever.
So as you continued to grow your business, and we can talk also about music, but did you have mentors in your career that really helped move the needle or push you forward in new ways?
I don't remember having mentors. If you would call Wally Amos's story, Famous Amos, chocolate chip cookies, what sort of inspired me to even think about doing this. Of course, I didn't know him. So in that sense, he would not have been a mentor. But I think for me, every single day I went to work, I did the best I knew how to do. I would ask questions again. I would read everything I could. And I studied the market. I studied the food business. I would go to the trade shows. And I'm telling you, everyone loved these products. And having been on Hee Haw, I have to say I did milk that. I mean, people loved the fact that I was on that show, and they loved the show. It was such a family it was the longest running show in the history of television. Until recently, SNL has passed that up. But I used that. I used that in all of my promotional whatever, the brochures, the talks that I would give, and people loved it. And so I went from the stage to the stove.
That's a great line. What's happening with the business now? You've insinuated a little bit in past tense, and so I know you're still involved with the business, but not quite like you were before. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. Someone told me once, you start a business to sell it. And that has to make sense because, we don't live forever. And I've always had people wanting to buy my company through the years. And I would just say, you know what? I'm not ready. I'm still having too much fun. As you age, you get to a point where you lose steam. And by 2:00 in the afternoon, I was just ready to go home. And because takes so much out of your life. For me, as an entrepreneur, as a business owner, there's no downtime. There truly isn't, at least for small business. There's not. And so, I was thinking, gosh, I haven't had a vacation in 8 years. The last couple of times I went somewhere, the place almost burnt down. I had to put my cat down. And we lost a huge business from Target that I was able to get back because I was able to get on a plane and come home right away. And it was just one thing after another. And after a while, it should not be true, but maybe you have to be there all the time. And I was a little bit ready to get on with whatever the rest of life had in store for me. So I found these really wonderful young people that had a lot of energy and determination, loved the company, loved the chocolates, loved the whole background and the backstory, and made me an offer I couldn't refuse. So we're working together. I'm still the mother of Colts, the brand ambassador. I love being able to promote it and talk about the history of it, just like you would love telling about your child's childhood growing up. They're going to be able to take it a little farther than I can. And I'm proud of that.
Your story as a female entrepreneur in the day when you were starting all of this in a man's world, and then birthing the baby and moving to a new step in your career. And I guarantee right now your story is going to inspire other entrepreneurs and female entrepreneurs specifically probably to do something brilliant. So I applaud you for not only sharing that, but also for helping maybe the next generation move into the role they're supposed to assume. Sometimes it's a little hard to move over when it's time to let somebody step into your shoes and carry them forward.
That is very true. It was not easy. But what you do, you have to not think of yourself. You have to think of the company as almost like another person. What would you do? This was my baby. And this was my creation. And I had to make sure, first of all, they were going to take care of the people who worked for me. And secondly, that all of the recipes were going to stay the same in the sense that, I can't control it really down the road, but they were so in love with the company and the products that I didn't have any kind of concerns that anything would change. And they've done a great job. I have to tell you, they've done a fabulous job. And when I think about the difficulty of, it's almost like losing your identity in a sense, because Colt's was Mackenzie Colt. Mm-hmm. My face was on the products. My voice was there. I designed all the recipes. I designed all the packaging. That was, I think, the part of my brain that used to write music now was designing and creating product. And that was so much fun for me. And it worked, People bought it. It's successful. We're still here. I mean, how great is that?
So what words of wisdom do you have for others launching a business?
I think, first of all, who in the world, this is the worst job in the world, honestly. And I'm saying that because it doesn't pay well. The hours are nonstop. You don't get breaks, vacations. So you have to have that passion for what you're doing, because it really is the worst job. If someone were going to hire you for this job, you would say, no, why would I take that job? So it has to be something that's inside you that you really want to do. You have to enjoy the problems too, in a sense. That's another way to say it. All parts of it. I remember thinking, I love solving problems. Okay, this problem today, we're going to fix this. It's going to be hard, but we're going to get it handled. We're going to get it done, and we're going to move on. And when that happens, it's the best feeling in the world. So solving the problems is part of the joy. And if you can combine all those things, I think that's what allows you to keep going and growing.
We ask all of our guests on this podcast about advice that their parents or an older adult might have given them. What's one piece of advice that maybe a parent or an older adult shared with you that at the time you thought was silly, but now that phrase rings true every day in your life?
Oh, my mother would say to me, you have a partner in your business, because she knew how hard I worked. And that partner is God. God is your partner, no one else. And if you work well with God, you're going to do well. And you listen. Just be quiet sometimes and just listen. And I never forgot that. It was very tender when she told me that. And I completely agreed with her. And I've always tried to remember that. And that will be with any part of my life, not just Colt's chocolates. And I listened also, I was very quiet and listened when I was trying to decide who I would sell my baby to. That's a terrible line, sell my baby to. I don't mean that, but you know what I'm saying. Who I would sell my company to. Because I had quite a few potential buyers. So, yeah,
Sure.
Just be quiet and listen. Be still and listen for a minute.
I can only imagine it's almost like looking for an adoptive parent or something. You have to find the right fit, someone who will be true.
Very emotional. Yeah.
So I have one final question, and that is, what is it that you do, Mackenzie, to squeeze the day?
Oh, first of all, I'm writing a book. And I'm writing a book about my life story. I also know that I have some cookbooks in me. I definitely want to do that. I love to speak to people, to audiences, and motivational speaking. And I was doing quite a bit of that when COVID hit. And so it kind of all stopped, as you know. And I'm really looking forward to starting that again. Because I do love my story, and I do think people can be motivated by it. And I have so many women that come up to me and say that. They say, my family says that I make this or that, and it's really special and different. And how do I get started? There's so much of that out there, and I would love to motivate them and help them. But I also, I'm in the process of writing my story, and it's got a lot of chapters.
Well, I can say that we all look forward not only to eating your chocolates, but learning more about your story and reading your book. I want to thank you for joining us. What an amazing life of leadership we're witnessing from interviews and stories such as yours.
Thank you.
Now we challenge everyone listening to go squeeze the day.